being present with people. It really is that simple and yet that complicated, where that feels too, I don't know, simple, too elementary, but it's profound. It's profoundly healing, just that someone's with you. Because God is with us. He's not just fixing us. He's not just changing us. He is with us.
Hey, Castleview, so good to be here today. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Castleview Baptist Podcast. I've got a special guest today with us. Some of you that have been here for several years would remember Pastor Harley Snode. He pastors in Ohio, came out and did a mental health conference for us, and Pastor Harley did a great job for you. You remember coming out, was it 4 years ago,
I do,
you think?
yes, at least 4 years ago.
Was it snowy out then too?
I don't remember that, but it definitely is today, that's for sure.
Here we are, Mother's Day this weekend. And we know here in Colorado, you cannot plant. You do not plant anything before Mother's Day, and even after Mother's Day, you might lose it.
Yes.
And so typically we've got that spring storm, and so we're supposed to get. I think we got 6-7 inches now.
Sure.
I think it's supposed to snow throughout the day too. So
it's
this kind of like, do you get this in Ohio? You get some snow, right?
Not usually this much, but yeah, it's still in play late into May. So we always joke about what May is. It may do this. It may do that. You can have a little bit of everything in one day. So.
Right. Well, if April showers brings May flowers, what does May snow bring?
Yeah,
I don't know what that.
We're about to find out.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Huh? You started your church? Didn't you plant there in Ohio?
Yeah, actually, we would have been only about a year behind you.
That's
I remember
right.
that. We both worked with Baptist Church Planting Ministries.
That's right.
Yeah, a lot of the things that you printed, like your John and Romans, we would have used those kind of to model ours.
Got it.
Yeah, we were about a year behind you. So
I remember that. That's right. We've kind of had it. It's been fun to watch. When I don't know if you remember this or not, but there wasn't a ton. Facebook was relatively new.
Yes.
I think church planters now, you get online and you see so many church plants. Sure. And I think I don't want to say it was so difficult. We're walking up snow back, both ways or whatever, but you didn't have the models online that you could just. That was at least my experience. Was that yours?
Sure. Yeah. You kind of felt like you were creating it from scratch and you're reaching for anything, including a guy in Colorado. Hey, what's he doing? or maybe what not to do.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say, hey, the joke's on you. That guy in Colorado had no idea what he was doing at the time.
Yeah. Welcome to the club. You at least ease my mind a bit. Hey, if that guy, God can use him, he can use me. Right.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap up this interview. Yes, this has been excellent.
Yes, that's right.
No, it's so funny now because you watch stuff and you go, man, I wish I'd have done that. Or, and you tell me this, it's probably a blessing and a curse in some ways. A curse in the sense that you didn't get to see a ton of other places while we were starting. Mm-hmm. But probably a blessing because sometimes I know my heart can be a comparison type heart. Did you ever go through that? Because I'm thinking of, hey, they're a year old, I'm a year old. How are they doing compared to us? Hey, they're they just had their 5-year anniversary. So did we. Yeah. How are we doing in comparison to them? And that can be unhealthy.
I agree. I think it just allowed you to be fully engaged in where God had put you and not getting, because context is so unique, right? Yeah. I mean, this is so different than where I'm at. Same gospel, same mission, but it's going to look different. Pace.
Yes.
All those comparison things. I do think that's something the younger guys navigate that it's just a thing,
Yeah. You can't just be what this other guy in another state is doing because you've got a different context and people are different there. You're going to really make some mistakes. Your church has really done well. It's been fun to watch. And you guys have done a phenomenal job. One of the things that I really appreciate about you is you're very measured. When I hear you speak, you and I are different in this. Like when thoughts come to my mind, a lot of times they make their way out, whether they should or not. You're the kind of person that just, to me, every time I've been around you, very measured, very deep wisdom. And I feel like I've not been to your church, but I just feel like you would have a really strong, discipled group of people there at your church. So well done.
That's very kind of you to say. Yeah, I would say you probably talk at a little higher decibel level than I do naturally. Probably a little faster clip as well.
Sure.
Sometimes I'm late to the game. You would be maybe a little more eager, timely. But yeah, I think it does. Your personality, isn't it amazing how it does bleed into your church culture for good or bad, right?
Yes.
And your people. And then you staff your weaknesses. And, some of our staff guys are opposite they'd be wired.
Yeah.
Like our youth pastor, I tell him, I could tell you Saturday night you're preaching tomorrow and it would actually be good. Like he's good at ad lib.
Yes.
And I'm just a little more, it's got to be planned out,
prepped,
processed.
Yes.
And that can be both positive and negative. So I feel like, to be nice to you today, your wiring also works, you know. You make me a little nervous sometimes, but no, I'm just kidding. No,
that's right. We'll see. We've got a good plan.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, we have the most scripted probably line of questions that I have for you today.
If I'm going to get Harley to come on, it's got to be scripted.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that came from you. Like,
there you go.
I think we need to talk about. And I thought, man, these look really, really good.
No, you're good. I appreciate you letting me come on.
Well, I think it's a good lesson. If you're a church planter out there, you've got to be you. You know, you got to be who you've been created. Drew Shetler, of course, he's behind the wall over here. He's the one that produces this. We were just talking about his dad, and I laugh about this. There are some influential pastors out there in the country that people will emulate or act like or try to. If you try to do what Pastor Shetler does, you'll look like an idiot. That's just, you know what I mean? He's so unique.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of guys out there, though, that are trying to be who someone else is. And you've just got to, hey, this is who God created me to be.
Yeah, I think find your voice, which I think does take time, and just being okay with that. You know, you try something that didn't work or that doesn't fit our culture. And I think that's where the Spirit comes in. I don't know about you, but I love the idea of the grace of God being multifaceted. It's almost like light hitting a prism. You know, when it comes out the other side, it's different colors. And being okay that my color of grace and gifting is different than him.
Yeah.
God gets glory from that. You know,
that's that whole Paul, but the body, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got different needs. People have different desires. They're looking for something different. They need something different. All of that. So I think that you talk about finding your voice. I don't think I remember about 7-8 years ago, feeling like, you know what I feel like? And boy, I think I was 10, 11 years into the church plant. So sorry to all those people that were here the first 10 years. But I feel like over the last 7-8 years, I finally kind of found, okay, this is who I am. And I'm 53 now. I think some guys find it a lot sooner than that, for sure.
Sure.
But for me, I kind of felt like maybe I was a late bloomer in that. But you got to find your voice at some point.
You do. And I think that idea of just range, you know, heaven's throng of worshipers is going to be, I think it's the range of people there is what will actually redound to the glory of God. And so why not have that here? You know, you being different than me, that's a good thing. That's, you know, different. I heard a guy the other day say, don't moralize what are preferences, you know, where difference not bad, difference not good. It's just different, you know, and God is, I love that he does that, you know, the variety, the range of his creation. And
it's almost like a great choir. You know, you've got all those different voices, you've got the different instruments, you've got the different sounds, but they all come together, should all come together and harmonize well. Well, your family has been through it. Over how long is this? Has this been a year and a half, 2 years, maybe longer than that? I guess, you know what, let me just throw it out there. Tell our audience what you want them to know.
Sure.
And maybe give a little context. We're going to talk about what it looks like to be a chronic caregiver. I know we've got some people in our church that are like that, you know, they've got maybe an aging parent, maybe it's a young person that has some needs. And what's been going on in your lives, and bring us up to speed.
Yeah, I think I would begin by saying, you know, unfortunately, to have a story worth telling, typically you have to go through some suffering, right? And so I think our story definitely is a combination of suffering and God's grace and sustaining presence in our lives, you know, over these last number of years. So kind of our story for my son Landon, who is now 18, he'll be 19 in July. He was a freshman in high school, and unbeknownst to us, he was starting to have a lot of fatigue, facial pain, light sensitivity, noise sensitivity, a lot of head related issues, pervasive, just chronic headaches, a lot of brain fog, things that just were hard to even quantify as a freshman in high school. How do you put language to that? How do you and so I think for a while he thought it was just in his head, just something to kind of navigate on his own. I would say probably it's been almost 3 years ago that he let us in on that. And so we kind of began from that point, just kind of how do you even put that into words, what he was experiencing. We do think likely the working theory is some of it's related to him getting COVID, which added extra inflammation to maybe some structural things that already were going on in his body. Mm-hmm. He's always had health issues from birth until today. Mm-hmm. He had issues such as he'd fall asleep as a baby, bite his tongue, wake up with a pool of blood in his mouth, just swallowing issues, everything from the neck up. He's just had issues since birth. And so I think post-COVID, that era at least, coupled with puberty, adolescence, his body growing into his body, he started to experience these symptoms even more intensely. And so some of it's neurological, some of it is structural, and so we've been all over. We were in Arkansas for 7 months last year with him at a clinic there, trying to address some of the neurological issues. Did see a little bit of measured improvement, and then ran into some of the structural issues. That is why we're here in Denver even this weekend. And so he just had surgery in January to remove some structural things that were impeding his jugular vein. Basically, summary would be his head is under intracranial pressure that's a result of blood not draining out of his head. So with that, things like pupils dilated more than they should be, lots of headaches, lots of just kind of derealization kind of issues. And so we just had a follow-up appointment actually yesterday as of this recording. And we did see that we've resolved a pretty significant part of the blood flow. The problem is there's still a lot of nerve issues that are very kind of, it's kind of like nailing Jell-O to the wall. It's hard to like quantify that. Yeah. And I guess our strategy at this point is a lot of prayer. Yeah. And then also trying to remove anything that is more tangible, physical, structural, with the hope and prayer that then those nerves will reactivate and we'll begin to see some cessation or at least reduction in those symptoms. But I guess that would be the medical part of it. The other challenge would be with that comes a lot of isolation. I haven't worshiped in church with my son in well over a year. He's in his room most of the time, and a lot of his story that's for him to tell. But it is a challenge for those of your church who are watching this to intersect with that as a parent, as a caregiver. Yeah. And I would say, I'm the one putting language to it today, but my wife has definitely borne more of the brunt of that as the mom, as the advocate, as the primary kind of segue between my son and the physicians or the therapist. And so we're probably, we'd be for my son about 5 years into this, but as far as actively trying to assertively treat it, going on 2 years now.
Is this something that when you see Landon, you would know it? Or is it, obviously he knows it, that he's going through it. Is it something that you would know, okay, something's off, he doesn't feel well, if you're the average person around seeing him?
Yeah, I think if you would see him, you would see a profile of battling some depression, battling some just kind of isolation. Not antisocial, but just at a bit of a aloofness.
Not quite,
Yeah, and so you would, at least if you knew him before this season, you would definitely notice. Which is heartbreaking as a parent, to see this take from your son. Here would be an example. So he and I were talking about career, like not if, but when he gets free of this. That's our faith. That's our belief that God's going to give us incrementally, probably deliverance from this. I said to him, do you think you're an introvert or an extrovert? And he said, Dad, to be honest with you, I've had this for so long, I don't even know what my personality is. So it's just very, any of your folks that are watching that maybe navigate this, how it can just take from you even who you are almost. You lose a sense of that. And so, that would be, I guess, a summary of our story, in 2 or 3 minutes of what has taken several years of our life to just advocate for, seeking answers, all that goes with that, travel, finance, et cetera.
Yeah, you guys have been through an interesting, you're obviously actively going to treatment centers. You're here in Denver, seeing a specialist. I know you've done some traveling, seeing specialists. There are some caregivers that you're dealing with people that they don't feel well at all,
Yeah.
and doctors haven't figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like your church has done a really good job of caring for you all from the outside looking in.
Sure.
But I don't know how I want to ask this question. There are times I think that people, they don't understand what you're going through,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, we just saw him and he looked fine to me,
Mm-hmm.
and yet we haven't seen him at church
Right.
as much, or
Right.
this is. Any advice for people that they're not the chronic caregivers? They're kind of hearing a story of somebody that they're going through something, and sometimes we can be like, well, yeah, we all go through stuff. Pull up your big boy pants and let's keep on going forward here. Any advice to somebody that maybe they're on the side of, man, I can't get out, I can't. What would you say to somebody that's going through that?
The two things that come to my mind, one would be trying to not, anytime you see someone in that situation, if your heart's in the right place, you want to help, right? And so I think a lot of times our best desires or intentions can often come off as actually the opposite in how they're received. So I think it would be maybe not having a overly simplistic or reductionistic view of it. So, I've been taught in counseling, you should never say to someone, if you would just blank, then this would be resolved. And I feel like those who have, unbeknownst to them, discouraged us tend to make it about this one thing versus it's always more nuanced. It's always, chronic illness is always more complex, multifaceted than probably someone who isn't in the thick of it can realize. So I think just assuming that and not having what is well-intended, I'm sure, in a church culture or otherwise, overly simplistic or reductionistic view of it, at least give space for. I'm sure there's some things I don't understand. Like, I've learned to say that. Hey, Tate, I know you're going through some things. I'm sure there's some things I don't know, but what I do know, I'm praying for you. And so I think that would be one thing. The second thing would be just giving them options on ways you can help them. I heard a guy say recently, he said, what little part of your burden can I take from you today? Just today. And not the whole thing, but what's one small part that I can carry for you?
That's a great way to put that.
That kind of gives them space to let you help them on their own terms, And then just saying, hey, I would like to do this, or this, or we're going to drop a meal buy off. Do you want it Thursday, Friday, or Saturday?
Yeah.
Not
that's different than, hey, you let me know if you need.
Oh yeah.
Who's reaching out?
Yeah. They don't have the energy to start that conversation or to close that loop. And so I think if you just say, I'm going to help you, but you can tell me when best or how best that suits you, really frees up the conversation.
I think that's we've tried to tell our church that too, is it's so much better to frame it that way. Hey, I'm bringing a meal by. Do you have any allergies, or what night is going to be the best for you? And they will tell you if they don't want you to.
Right.
But it's to wait for them to tell you, they're not going to do it. So along that line, what are some things that you would say as a pastor? Maybe people have said it to you, or maybe as a pastor you've just experienced this, so you know what to do with this. What are some things you wouldn't say to somebody that's going through something? Because I think Christians are well-intentioned, and we want to say the right word. And there have been times, we just talked about our different personalities. You would be more measured and a little bit more guarded with what you're going to say. And I feel like I got to say something. Right. What would you say would be maybe things not to say to somebody?
I could think of some specifics. I would say general would be saying what you say for the benefit of the listener versus for your own benefit. So like what I would say to you would be, I noticed for me, even with my son, I want to bring him out of where he's at so I'm comfortable. Hey, instead of thinking, I'm going to come sit with you where you are with what you're struggling with, even if I don't want to be in this dark room or I don't want to be in this awkward silence moment, thinking of what does he need from me versus even what we say at a funeral, at a hospital bedside, that you can tell when someone's saying it for their own comfort or ease versus to actually serve the listener. So I think it's just a mindset that you approach that. And I guess what I would say is maybe more questions, just a question of even, I hate to say this because I don't want someone to not ask if they feel led to, how are you? How's your son? That's a hard question when nothing's changed in the last 6 months or a year. I love this question. I've learned this from others. Are you hanging in there? Where it's almost you're validating the prolonged nature of it,
Yeah.
and you're giving them a chance to go wherever they want with that answer.
Yeah.
So I think it's maybe more open-ended questions that allow them then to give you a reference that then I think the follow-up, I mean, because you do these podcasts, often the follow-up is where the gold comes, right? I do a lot of counseling.
Mm-hmm.
The initial question lets them tell me where they're at, and then it's that follow-up is where you really get real with each other.
Yeah.
So I think if you can learn open-ended questions that then they give you permission to come so far with them, or hey, I just need you to sit with me. There's nothing more we need to say at this point. So I think it's more just guidelines versus specific things to say or not say.
Yeah,
sure. And we all know
what's the motive behind it.
Yeah, and we all know when we're using our words to serve someone, and we know when we're just trying to like let something out or get something
make
off
ourselves
our chest.
Comfortable.
Yeah,
in that moment. Well, and for instance, this may sound counterintuitive, and maybe you disagree with me, and just say it if you do.
Sure.
I think sometimes Christians will throw out Bible verses at inappropriate times. That's a funny way to put it. Inappropriate times. The Bible's always appropriate, but it almost minimizes somebody's pain, or it can be trite, or hey, well, the Bible says all things work together for good, brother. Well, I know that. Why is that maybe not sometimes the best way? Not that you would never give someone Bible, because you got to know your relationship. You've got to be able to discern what they need when they need it. But do you know what I'm saying when I say that?
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. It's crazy as two pastors saying that there are times where sharing scripture is maybe not, at least in the moment, the thing to do. But I think what I'd say is I think it takes the Holy Spirit out of the conversation where, we take the Word of God. You can't divorce it from the ministry of the Spirit, His leadership, His sense of timing. Like you mentioned, finding your voice, in your late 40s. I feel like for me, the difference between you and I and guys that are 20 years ahead of us, that are pastors, is their tone. They just have a more Spirit-led tone, and they also have a more Spirit-led sense of pace or timing. So I feel like we take the word and we assume just because it's the word, then how we wield it, how we pass it on to others, then it's just kind of up to us, you know?
Right.
And so I think it's not just what we say, even with scripture, but how we say it, when we say it.
Well, that's the whole Paul speaking the truth, of course.
Yeah.
But in love, and that love may be exactly what you came back to a moment ago. I'm not trying to love myself by making myself comfortable here in this moment by what I say. I want to love and minister to you as you're going through this.
And sometimes I think with a believer, you both know Romans 8:28, and the fact you choose not to share it shows a level of restraint. I think a lot of times we feel like, well, they need to hear it. Well, most of the folks you and I minister to, they know that verse. What they need is to feel it and to sense, that I believe it, and yet I'm going to love you while we wait on that.
And if they read that in the Bible, right, they're in their devotions and they come across it, well, that's going to, the Holy Spirit can minister to them.
Yeah.
I think the reason that sometimes it maybe doesn't land the right way when we give it too quickly or kind of just as a one-off comment and that fixes everything and we're going to move on, it minimizes the pain they're going through in that moment. I think that's maybe the feeling that somebody going through something is experiencing in that moment.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they're if you're not in it, you grow impatient. You want to get right to the solution. And it's like Christ at Lazarus' tomb.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the most striking example of Christ slowing down, weeping with the sisters.
Yes.
Like if he had missed that and gone right to the resurrection, I guarantee Mary and Martha in hindsight would have said, we needed that moment. We needed that processing with him that then was eclipsed by the resurrection, the joy that came. Yeah. So I think being present with people, it really is that simple and yet that complicated, where that feels too, I don't know, simple to elementary, but it's profound. It's profoundly healing, just that someone's with you. Yeah. Because God is with us. He's not just fixing us. He's not just changing us. He is with us. And I feel like that's probably an underdeveloped aspect of our understanding of the gospel, that God is with us in things. He's not just fixing them or redeeming them, the Romans 8:28 kind of thing. So,
well, let me shift gears here a little bit. Your personality is not so much bombastic. Your personality, though, is very thorough, prepped. You do your homework. That can lead to some control. right? There's a little bit of,
I will agree to that.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm willing to come on. I don't have the script all the time. I'm just, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about stuff. Your personality though would be okay. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. That's there are times I should have been much more prepped than I was. But let me talk about that control issue for just a moment, because you're a pastor, so you get the ability to set the narrative and tone and to control some things. You're a church planter, so I mean you got to structure things the way you wanted to. You're a man, right? So we kind of like to be able to be in control. Talk about the challenges of watching your son go through something that you cannot control.
Yeah. I think if I were in a clinical setting, I probably would be diagnosed with OCD. Like, I'm very, details matter to me, specifics matter. And it's not by chance that God has put me in a situation, a crucible, where everything about that is outside of my control. And so it's highly uncomfortable, to be honest with you. I think my wife would share that. She's also very task oriented. Let's knock this out. Let's fix this. And this defies that approach to life and family and even ministry. So, and, I think I would say to you, I've tried, these things I'm going to say to you are still in process. So this is not me as expert, so-and-so's figured this out. We're still in the thick of things with my son. I'm still in the midst of my personal sanctification on these very issues. But I would say to that, growth and comfort are never in the same room. So God has put me in a room and put my son in his own room at home where there's much about that I'm not okay with it. I'm not comfortable with it. But he's really stretching me. So I think viewing everything from a growth mindset is a key piece of this, that, God, if you're going to grow me as I'm praying on a regular basis, then obviously you're going to redeem these things that feel out of my control, open-ended. Even saying to you today what it is a little hard to even quantify, let alone here's how we're going to fix it. So I think that's something I lay my head at night on that pillow is, God, I was uncomfortable today, so God's growing me. So I try to rejoice in that. I think I would say to that as well, the control part is you basically have, here would be the illustration. So we did a Sunday on lament at our church about 2 years ago, on what is lamenting in the Psalms? How can we enter into that in our context today? A third of the Psalms were written in the minor key. One author said, so like there's a lot of dissonance, a lot of somberness, grief, even shaking the fist at God almost moments in the Psalms. So anyway, we had that context, and I had a panel of like 5 or so sitting on our stage, and I said to them, one lost their child, one had some heart-wrenching things happen in their past as a child, with their own child, different things like that. And as I talked to them, I said, how do you deal with that? And at the end of the day, each of them in their own way, all 5, it landed on God is sovereign. And so I think at some point you have to choose between control that you're trying to manage and maintain and the belief and conviction that my God, according to the scripture, is in control. He is sovereign. And there's a rest that comes from that. There's a peace that comes from that you can't find with your own control. It's kind of like a child. Like, there's such a innocence, maybe a naiveness as well, that they're vulnerable to certain threats and risks. But they don't worry about the next meal. They don't worry about the threats that you and I, if we track with the news much, we're concerned about, the price of gas or whatever. And so I think the control is released and relinquished when I choose to believe that God is in control. And I allow him to do it his way and his time, with the understanding if he ever wants to give me a part in that, I'm willing to be a part of that. It's not a passive belief in the sovereignty of God. But it is he's above me, his thoughts, his ways. And so if I'm going to let him redeem it and use it for his purpose, I've got to let him do it his way.
I love what you said. Growth and comfort don't live in the same room. When you look at the Bible, you find that so often in the lives of Moses, for example. You've got the backside of the desert, and he's learning humility and patience. I think he's learning to hear the voice of God, because you're going to have all these murmuring, complaining Israelites that okay, God, I can really hear this, but I've got to drown that out to hear you. Joseph, with all the things he's going through. Paul, I've got that thorn in the flesh. God, you're doing these amazing things, no question. but you're going to keep dependence. I'm going to keep my eyes on. I'm not going to get arrogant, not going to get proud. You give me this to show me that your grace is sufficient. I've told our church, I feel like we all love the mountaintop. Here we are in Colorado. We all love the mountaintop, right? It's nice to get to the top, right? You take a nice hike and climb up and you look around, you can see. But when you take these 14ers, there's no growth up there. I mean, you get above 11,000 feet and, you get away from plush grass. There's not trees anymore. I mean, it's rocks, right? I mean, it's just rocky up there. You look way down into the valley, and what do you see? You see lush green, you see the trees, you see the rivers, the nourishment, all of that. It's wonderful to get to the top of the mountain every now and then, but that's not where the growth comes. Yeah. It really does come from the valleys. That's where God shapes us so many times. Hard to keep your mindset that way in the middle of it, though. It's got to, right?
Yeah, and I think part of it is the challenge with the beauty of the mountaintop is you have a broader perspective. You can see eternal values and vision. You kind of have that vista. And I think when you're down in the thick of it, everything, you get a myopic view of life.
Yeah.
It shrinks your emotional point of reference. It shrinks your just your perspective on things, and little things become big things because they're the only things. You know what I mean? So I just think context, you can lose that in chronic seasons. And I would guess in your church, they experience that too, where, yeah, in a better season, this little irritant would not be everything on the horizon of my heart and life, but I feel like it just really shrinks you lose your point of reference. You lose God.
Yeah.
And so you have to trust him when you can't see that or sense that. He still sees that.
Yes.
And I don't know if this makes sense to you, but that idea of the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. I just have to take the step without even knowing where it's headed. And these things are all going to sequence out the way he wants,
That's good. Pastor Shetler gave me a painting several years ago that is Peter, and he's sinking. And, the storm is around. It's a Jekyll painting. It's a beautiful painting. Yeah. And, of course, Jesus is there. And there's this huge wave just getting ready to envelop, just crush them. And Jesus has reached down, and he's grabbed a hold of Peter's hand. And Peter cannot see it, but from the perspective of the one looking at the painting, you see the sun breaking out off into the distance, right? And you're talking about that view that you have, you're up, right? I mean, you're at the mountaintop, you see this great view. You can see things. When you're in the valley, you can't. It's hard to be able to see any good. And along with that, the person that you're giving care to.
Yes.
I mean, we're kind of talking about caregivers, obviously. That's a little bit of the point of this podcast. But the one that's going through it, I mean, they're the one sinking. They're the one that is in that valley. How do you love them through that? How do you encourage them in days that they just don't have hope? This isn't going to get better. It's been 5 years. I just don't see the progress I want to. How do you meet their needs? How do you love them where they're at?
That's I think the eternal question for the caregiver is you can sense that more intensely than anyone else in their lives. And I think you can tend to view that as a burden, where it's like, technically in the counseling space, we haven't talked much about that as far as my reference point on that, other than being here a few years ago. But the counseling term would be codependency. It's very easy for the caregiver, their day to be shaped by, they only can see the sun, like you were talking about, if the chronic sufferer can see the sun.
Yeah.
And if they can't, then that squelches all joy and peace and direction. And you almost feel guilty to have a laugh or to have a joyous moment because they're suffering. Yeah. And I think we have to, first of all, regain an emotional autonomy, a sense of identity that is not, though we love them, it's not contingent on them. And that's not because we don't love them. That's actually the best way to lead them, is to maintain that distinction of, I love you, but you don't ultimately determine how I feel about my day. The reason I say that is because then you're able to lead them to the light, to the sun, to those joys.
Because you've been living in it. You can see it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it comes off, I think it tends to be for the caregiver, we feel that false sense of guilt or shame. Yeah. And I think instead it's modeling for them the spirit that then
Yes.
they can follow in our footsteps. And especially when they're weak, we're
Yes.
almost as a
Yes.
surrogate, we're
Yes.
laying that foundation for them.
Yeah. And that's so hard because as a parent, so much of our joy
Yeah.
is wrapped up in, and not in a bad way necessarily. It's not, any parent understands it. If my child is not well,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard for me to your whole day is shaped by this. Sunday, we were working through Genesis 22 with Abraham, and they go from Genesis 21 that Isaac is finally given. I mean, celebration, this is wonderful. And then you move right into Genesis 22, and it's just like, wait a minute, what? I've got to go and sacrifice this child. And we talked about idols for a few minutes. And we have a tendency to make so many things idols in our lives. Even a marriage, can be like we're expecting that wife or that husband to be to us what only God was designed to be. A lot of marriages crumble because, you're my peace, you're my joy. If you don't do what I want you to do, then everything falls apart. And no, this is a massive part of my life. You're a gift to me. I want to have a close relationship, but I cannot put you in the seat where God has got to be. And I would think, and I didn't make this parallel, but I would think even that applies to a degree in a situation like this. Hey, I'm with you in this pit that you're in. There's no question. But I've got to show you that hey, there's hope out here, and God can, almost an example in a way that you're going to go down to that pit, you're going to cry with them, you're going to hold them, you're going to comfort them with your words, you're going to understand what they're going through. But you can't stay there all the time, right? I mean, you've got to almost, hey, grab a hold of me, and almost like the best thing they can do sometimes is maybe piggyback off of your faith. Hey, I don't really have it right now, but Dad does.
Sure.
And maybe that can encourage somebody too.
Yeah, and I think it'd be the same as like I always teach with forgiveness. Like, can you grant forgiveness to someone who hasn't asked for it? We could debate that, but I think the key is the moment they come to ask forgiveness, is my heart already ready? To meet them, halfway on that. And I think the question for us parents or caregivers is, if God would heal or give some significant improvement to my child, spouse, sibling, etc., am I in a place of spiritual vitality to be ready for that moment? Because the temptation is to allow that, again, like you said, to keep you down in a way that when they're ready to lean back into relationship and spiritual vitality, whatever that looks like, you've got to be ready yourself to meet them there. And so I think part of faith is saying, I believe God's going to work in this situation. And the best way to practically do that is to take care of myself. Self-care is not selfish. It's strategic, Tate. I'm the best version of myself when I'm rested. I'm the best version of myself, even for my son and my wife, when I'm taking care of myself. So I think the temptation is everything gets sucked up into the vortex of this burden, this illness, at the expense of these other contributing factors, that even if we're only thinking of that sufferer, we've got to take care of ourselves to be everything we should be for them. If the strong support the weak, then we got to be strong, right? And so there should be no, again, guilt and I think respite, for caregivers, just to make sure we get this in today, respite is a key piece of that. You got to have time where, you talked about how can we help those who are suffering. I think offering respite. Hey, I'll sit with your son or your daughter, or I'll take care of this loved one for a few hours. You go have a coffee with a friend. You do something that's life-giving. And I think the temptation is the caregivers feel like they don't deserve that, when that's oftentimes the best way to serve that sufferer.
Yeah. Let them get, recharged. The Bible says, rejoice with those who do rejoice, weep with those who weep. My experience has been a lot of people don't want to admit at church that they're struggling.
Yes.
Yeah. And you texted me that idea yesterday that I think sometimes in church it's not okay for us, or we don't feel like it's okay for us to say, hey, it's going to be okay, but I'm not okay right now. Sometimes, and you said it like this, you said we don't say enough in church, it's okay that we're not okay, to admit that. Why? How is that helpful? Why is that okay?
Yeah, I think the two things I would say, one is I feel like we're not used to connecting with each other in those ways. It's very we dress up for church, or we put on this veneer.
Yeah.
And I think authenticity, vulnerability are such rare things in our community, even in smaller micro ways, that when we hit these big valleys, it's almost like if I want to stay in fellowship with the brethren, I've got to cloak that, or maybe look for a professional outlet, but I can't do so in the context of community.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is just exposes weaknesses in how we structure our churches.
I think it even reflects maybe the way the church is set up, in that, okay, we're so used to coming in. We've got 5 minutes before the service starts. We've got 5 minutes before we get out to our car and we're on our way out. And it almost structures us for small talk. It's all surface level stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Right. That we don't take the time. That's why the life groups are so important, and fellowships and friendships and these kind of things, to go a little bit deeper than that. I agree with that. I think that is part of that, is we've almost been conditioned to, and by the way, I think we do that because you walk into church and we've dressed up right. You said it, right? We've got it all together. I mean, we may have just been yelling at the kids in the car, but as soon as we close the door and and get out of that thing, then we're not going to show that to anybody. So you almost in the church can feel as alone as anywhere in the world if you're not careful, because at least at work, people that don't know Jesus, they're complaining about their marriage and they're telling you how bad everything is. But you go to church and it's like, oh, everyone else has it together, but I don't.
Yeah. And I think too, it's almost, so that would be the horizontal piece. And then the other part is it's viewed as like doubting God, questioning God, when sometimes verbalizing the struggle and then saying, I still believe in God, is actually a greater evidence of faith than like pretending we're all okay. I think that actually shows a more feeble faith and a lack of reverence for God. I think we almost feel like it's irreverent to say, God's given me something that makes me question everything in my life, and I want you to help me work through those things. You know what I mean? I guess it's, I'm in process versus I've arrived.
Yes.
And I think church should be a place where we're in process, and part of that is processing pain and suffering and grief. And I think if we could see our churches, I've been to Castle View enough to sense you have that same spirit. You want to be a place where that can happen. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to model that from the top down. And, for your folks, just being open with those you can trust and saying, hey, I am going through some things. I still believe in God. I still trust his word, but I'm having trouble reconciling that with the real challenges of life. That's all throughout Scripture. That's a biblical thing to do. And so I think affirming that versus feeling like this is uncomfortable, maybe this isn't even right, I think the church has to push back against that narrative.
Yeah. You've not dealt with it then, right? I mean, if you just act like it's okay and you let these questions linger, it's almost like a child with a parent that just explodes anytime they've got any kind of a sincere question. What do? They go underground. I'm not, okay, it's not that it went away. Your behavior made me not expose my feelings to you, but I still have them. And what happens is now I'm going to go process that on my own. And who knows how they're processing that. Whereas the safest place in the world should be the church, where you've got people around you that are saying that are praying with you. They can reach out throughout the week to meet the needs you're talking about, the respite, the care, the love, and all of that, and when appropriate, kind of help and point in the right direction, when they need it.
And I think, to be honest with you, if you would ask me what's the reason for so much deconverting in our day, I think it's that the church is not seen as a place where the gospel speaks to the whole person. Like, I do think we need a holistic approach to things, and I just think we have a list of things it's okay to ask prayer for in church. And then we have a much longer list of things that, it's like you walk up to somebody and say, hi, how are you? And then you regret asking, right? And you don't want to be the other person, right?
Right.
Oh, don't ask them how they're doing. But I think we almost we always do this. We swing way too far the other way versus if someone sincerely asks, no, how are you? Maybe God just led that person to let me then articulate. I think our emotions, if we can just talk them out, if we can process them in written form or in verbal form, they tend to untangle. And I think God provides the church to give that outlet.
And the church members take that as an assignment from God, that somebody comes to you and they feel close enough to you, comfortable enough with you, transparent enough with you, vulnerable enough that they share something. I love it when I look around our auditorium before or after a service and see a couple people praying together.
Yeah.
And I just know that somebody just said,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to process this, or I'm really struggling with this. Well, then throughout that next week, throughout the next month, or whatever that is, however long that thing is going on, take that as, okay, Lord, help me to be sensitive enough throughout the week to reach out. It could be a note, a card, a text, a call, whatever a meal, whatever the situation calls for. But I do think that when you talk about weep with those that weep, it is just simply the fact that, hey, this is a safe place for you. You can actually express that. And I'm glad you expressed it here and not out at work where you've got a bunch of unbelievers or people that are bitter over whatever. I'd rather you talk about it here than anywhere else.
And I think I'll say to you, with that in mind, if you'd ask me what's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, normally you and I are the ones doing that for others as a pastor, as an under shepherd. I'll be honest with you, there were seasons where I doubted whether that made a difference. Like me stopping by, us putting together a meal train, whatever the specifics. And I can tell you now, as being on the receiving end, those things really, really do matter. It's just a shot in the arm. It gets you through another hour. It gets you through another day. And so I think for your people, like just to encourage them that stuff does matter.
Yeah.
It's not token. It's not trivial.
Yeah.
It literally is life-giving. It's something tactile. It's something tangible. God still sees me. God still loves me. And through his people, he's doing that.
That is so funny. You just said it the way you did. God still sees me. Debbie and I last night, we're talking and just out of nowhere, she said, I love so-and-so. There's a younger couple in our church. They've got a couple children, very sweet family. And, but they've been to our church about a year, so younger to us. And she just offhand said, I love so-and-so. And I just thought, well, to me, I love secondhand compliments. Just when someone comes to me and says, hey, so-and-so said this about you, it almost adds another layer of, wow. I mean, that not only they're not flattering me, they went and told somebody else that. It must have meant something. And so I texted this couple, both of them together, and I said, hey, I just want you to know how much we appreciate you guys. Matter of fact, Debbie just said, I love, so-and-so, this wife. And didn't think anything of it. Sent it. We went on with our night. And about 20 minutes later, she sends a pretty lengthy text. And she says, listen, along her line of work, she's a caregiver. And she had somebody that passed that day. And it was just she said all day, I prayed with the pastor that came in for her, with her, just went through this. It was really a challenging day. Yeah. And she ended it by saying, your text just reminded me that God sees me. Amen. And he's wherever, you know what I mean? And so thank you for sharing that. I didn't think a ton of it at the time. We meant it, what was said. It wasn't just flippant that I texted it, but I wanted her to know that. But then it was kind of small, a small price to pay for me to send the text. But I think for somebody else, it can make a difference.
Yeah, and I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I feel like if it's small, I feel like if you do the small things, that actually sticks out, because most people think that and don't do anything with that, right? Like you could have easily just not sent that text. I think it's actually the small micro things we do to encourage people that really stand in stark relief to all the kind of generic things that are people saying or doing to them. So yeah, we have had just moments, Tate, to be honest with you, where you're at the end of like what you have intrinsically, fortitude, faith, and just that well-timed word, that little note, the thing sitting on the porch in the evening after dinner, like those things are you thank God for them, but you also then realize God just did something to remind me, he's here. I love that. He sees me.
Yeah.
That's the Hagar, right?
Yes.
Everything that happened to her in that dysfunctional family.
My God seeth me.
Yeah. And she didn't deserve that. She didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
But God, because of her affiliation with Abraham, he saw her, he met her needs. So
we just worked through that in Genesis. What a great passage. I mean,
I
never really, I don't think really went that deep into Hagar before, but that was encouraging for sure. This has been really good. Thank you for sharing so much. Is there anything I did not ask you that you feel like, I would like to put this in before we're finished today?
Yeah, I think I would just say probably the biggest lesson I've learned recently that might be of help to caregivers would be the passage in 1 Peter where it says, cast your cares upon him, for he cares for you. And I was at a conference a few months ago, actually, to be honest, a conference I didn't really feel like I had the emotional bandwidth for, and was sitting in a session, and the speaker was talking about he has two sons who are away from the Lord, and he was talking about every morning his rhythm is he gets up and he puts them on the Lord. And he was talking about that verb there of casting has the idea of hurling, and he said, if I have a ball in my hand, I can't get that ball to hit the other wall on the other side of the room without first releasing it. And so I think I would just encourage your folks where they have responsibilities of caregiving, that he's the ultimate caregiver, right?
Yeah.
And I think chronic illness especially wears us down and empties us of our own abilities so that we ultimately turn to him and release that person to him. And so my rhythm is every day I just give my son to the Lord and say, God, if you want to give me back a little chunk of that to do something, I'll move that ball forward, but ultimately he is yours. Same with my wife, same with our church. And so I think, that would be my encouragement is he is the ultimate caregiver. Aren't we glad for that? Because it's easy to like take it all on.
Yes.
Like if you really care,
yes,
you tend to then take on too much. And I think God ultimately gives us things to only then release them to him. And I feel like he loves our family more than we do. Like he loves my son more than I do.
Yeah.
He knows what plans he has for him. And so I think my discipline and desire has to be to release that to him. And to love someone is not always to be right up in their business. Sometimes it's giving space and room for God to intervene in that situation. And so if you care deeply, and most of us do if we're caring for others, I think it's ultimately about, I care enough for you that I'm going to give you to God every day, every moment. And then I could share if we had time and if my son gave permission, but we have seen God work in things that I could have never orchestrated myself. So if you just give it to him, he's going to take it and do with it what you and I could never even dream is possible.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to see God doing that in our lives even today.
Amen. That's a great word for that casting, hurling. You cannot hold on to that ball and God have that ball at the same time, right? You got to let go of it. I've told our church, I think about that word casting sometimes, and I literally think of fishing, right? And I'm pretty good at casting. I mean, I'll cast it out there, and I start kind of reeling that back in again, and okay, Lord, you got this, and then, wait a minute, no, I got a hand, like Abraham with Hagar.
Yeah.
We're going to scheme, we're going to make this happen. God's not coming through. Okay, I'm giving it to God now. Oh, no, God, you're not doing it the way I would. And boy, that's a growth season for you too, to be able to say, okay, I can rest in what God is doing. He's got a plan, and I can trust him.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult. It's easy to hypothesize and make that a theological statement. It's very challenging in the day.
It is, and I would say that's why often we'll say then prayer didn't work. I still feel the way I felt. The reason is because you left with the same burden you came to that with. How do we fully just release it to the Lord and then focus on Philippians 4, whatsoever things are good, honest, lovely. You focus on what you're supposed to, let God take the rest of it, and he gives you a peace. I love that verse in verse 10 where it says, and the peace, it says, and the God of peace shall be with you. It doesn't say the peace of God. It says the God of peace. And so I think it's prayer is us getting access to God. He knows my burdens, and now my job is just to lean into him and let him take it from there. So
a lot of rich truths you gave today. Thank you.
Thank you
for
Tate.
sharing that. I think it's good to hear from somebody that is not just theorizing, but actually going through it. And I'll pray for you and for Landon. We have, but I'll continue to. And now that I know a little bit more of the backstory, definitely know how to pray a little bit more fully as well. And I'll tell you this, we'll have church members that will too, that'll take this on, and I'd encourage our church to write this down. Hey, church, thank you for being a part of this. I just thought there were some great truths that were given there. Some of you are right in this place, whether it's caregiving and you're kind of worn out and you're at the end of your rope, whether you're in the place of needing care, or maybe it's just a burden. I think so many of these principles that Harley gave today were just nuggets of truth that when you're going through challenges, our God can be trusted. Here's how to handle it. Here's what to do. Give this to God. Leave it with him. How to love people as we're going through this. And so you may know someone going through this. You may know somebody that might be encouraged by this conversation. Feel free to share it. Let them know that and be an encouragement to them. And church, let's be very sensitive this weekend. as we come into church, let's be sensitive that there are people around us that are carrying needs and burdens that we would never even realize. Hey, thank you for watching this episode again of the Castleview Baptist Podcast. We will see you again next week.